All right, folks, welcome back to the channel. I've got something you've probably already seen all over the interwebs today, but the question is if you're flying a TinyHawk, and these things are awesome, they're great for indoors, they're not so great outdoors. I mean, they'll do the job, but they're not great. Where do you go from here? You have a TinyHawk, you have a controller, you have goggles, you have a bunch of these 1S lipos laying around. Where to go next? Well, Emax has made that very easy for you, and it's this. The Emax Tinyhawk Freestyle. This is the Emax Tinyhawk blown up into a real outdoor acro drone. It even uses the same electronics, same VTX, same camera, different motors, different props, different frame. And this thing runs on 2S. Yes, it can run on 1S, but if you're stepping up from this guy, why go back down to 1S when we can rock 2S? With this thing, I got about a 6-minute flight, not being super gentle on it, but also not just full throttling it everywhere. This thing flies incredible. Out of the box, Emax has nailed it. This thing flies perfect. It leaves nothing to be desired as far as its flight characteristics. In the perspective of going from an indoor whoop style, ducted drone, to something outdoors that does freestyle very well. I really wouldn't recommend flying this indoors because without the ducted rotors, this thing does kind of present a little bit of a safety concern. Plus, you don't want to get, you don't want to leave marks on your walls. But anyways, this thing uses your existing 1S high volt lipos from your TinyHawk. They just strap onto the top here. Like so, and surprisingly they hold in really well. I was really kind of surprised. I figured they would just eject every time you crash it. Plug one in, and then plug the second one in. And you're good to go. Now you can fly this on 1S if you put a little jumper in there to bridge these two contacts on either one of the battery ports there. But we're not going to talk about that today. But what we're going to talk about is this. It's perfect if you're making the step up from indoor to outdoor. In the box, you get the drone. You get the really nice Emax case. It looks exactly like the one that the ducted TinyHawk comes in. Inside here, you get 2 sets of Yvonne Rush 2.5 props. I've already got one set installed. Have a set as a backup. You get a pretty good little instruction manual here. Talks about how to assemble the drone, how to operate it, bind, all that stuff. You get 2 of these 450 1S high volt batteries, and you get a USB charging board. This is really, really nice. And you also get a little bag of screws. It comes with screws for mounting your props, extra gummies for the flight controller, extra O-ring for the camera, some standoffs, just a little bit of everything you need. It even comes with a C-clip for the motor in case you lose one. And it all comes in this nice little case. Unfortunately, you can't put the drone back in there while the props are installed. That's about the only downside, but I think if this were me, I would just kind of do one of these things like so. And just kind of chuck that to the side. So we're using all the same electronics as the ducted version, even the camera. The camera works just fine. It does what it's supposed to do. It does leave a little bit to be desired because there's very little adjustability for the angle. You've got 2 holes up here at the top of the canopy. Front one gives you a lower angle and the back one gives you a higher angle. But if you check around on sites like thingiverse.com, and if you know a buddy with a 3D printer, and remember what I always say about 3D printing, it's always better to know somebody with a 3D printer than to actually have one yourself. get them to print you out a mount, and then you can adjust the camera angle. And what you could even do, which I've seen, is install something like RunCam Racer Nano, which I'll probably be doing in a future video here. Not that it needs it, but you know, if you got the parts, why not? Just for funsies. The motors are 7,000 kV, 1103 motors. These are perfectly sized for the drone. You don't get that, you know, when you're trying to hover, the motors are overpowered. You'll sit there and kind of just have a hard time holding altitude. These things are perfectly sized for this prop, for the power output for these batteries, for the weight of the drone. It is exactly what it's supposed to be. And that, I think, is the key to this drone, is it is trying to do one thing and only one thing, and that is to be a step up in skill from the indoor ducted whoops, and it's kind of intermediate between this and say like a 5-inch racer. This is perfect. It'll definitely get you under that 250 gram weight restriction. Matter of fact, let's go ahead and weigh it. I'm sure I'm not going to be the first one to weigh it, but you know, why not, right? So the drone itself, with props and screws, is 53 grams plus 2 lipos, 77, 78 grams. So you are well under the 250 gram mark if you live in those places where you got to deal with that stuff. This model comes pre-set up, like literally out of the box. You can go out and fly this thing. It requires no configuration whatsoever, but you can go in and configure it if you would like. It comes with your VTX antenna already mounted like this, or your RC antenna is just kind of dangling out the back there. Shouldn't be too much of an issue. You can probably find a better way to route that, but this works pretty good as it is. This model can bind in both D8 and D16 mode. So if you have one of the newer FreeSky radios with the ISRM using the access protocol, you can bind to this. You don't need an external XJT module or a multi-protocol module or anything like that. But you will have to go into Betaflight and alter one of the settings. You'll have to switch to FrSky X mode, which will make this thing read in D16 instead of D8. If we look at the bottom of this, there is your bind button right down inside here. That is your bind button there. I found that hitting that bind button and plugging in is a super big pain in the butt. Nice thing about this is we're on Betaflight 4.0.4. You can hook it up to Betaflight, go down to the CLI and type in this command right here, and it'll put this thing into bind mode. And then you just tell your Taranis to start binding, and you're good to go. Now, if you don't want to mess with anything in the computer, you don't want to mess with Betaflight or any of that, you can set this up as long as you can fly this as long as you set up your model properly. So the way that this thing is set from the factory is channel 1 is going to be throttle, channel 2 aileron, channel 3 elevator, channel 4 rudder, channel 5 is going to be arm, 6 is your flight mode, so acro, horizon, all that. Channel 7 is set up for a lost model alarm, a beeper, and channel 8 is set up for turtle mode. If you set up your model exactly like this, you'll be able to fly this thing out of the box without having to mess with any modes in Betaflight. Now, one thing to note is the VTX is only 25 milliwatts, so it's not going to pump out a ton of power. There's not going to be a lot of penetration, and it does come locked. And I still don't really understand why manufacturers do this, because they even call it FCC locked. The simple matter is, if you're broadcasting on pretty much all the VTXs that we use, you need to have a ham technician's license. How many people have that? Well, I'm going to say it's very, very few people. So the downside to this is when you go to a locked channel, it'll switch, but it'll just give you a black screen. And that kind of is a downside I see. If anything, if you switch to a mode, or if you switch to a channel that is locked, this thing should just not switch, but it does switch. So on this, the way to unlock the VTX so you're not blocked is to hold down the button here on the VTX. It's right here, there's a little cutout in the top plate right here. You need to hold down on that while powering on and hold it down for me, it took about 20 seconds just to make sure it actually held. So I'd hold that down for 20 seconds and your VTX should be unlocked. This does work with the Betaflight Lewis grips, so you can do your programming through there and also adjust your VTX settings. But all in all, this thing is perfect. It even sounds cool going through the air. I don't know, these Avon Rush props, these 2.5s they're just cool sounding. This thing is perfect for what it was designed for. It's nothing more and nothing less. If you want to step up, or even if you're an experienced pilot and you just want something that's quiet, that's not going to bug the neighbors and is small enough that you can rip around a small yard, this is perfect. I highly, highly recommend you check this out. Emax is notorious for doing things right the first time and doing a good job. I know their customer service sometimes is a little spotty if you have issues. Fortunately, all the parts in this, if you already have this and you break something, I mean, other than the frame and the motors, if you fry in electronics, you could probably scavenge it out of that guy there. But anyways, so this is the Emax Tinyhawk Freestyle, sent to me by Banggood for review. Please click that product link in the description below, like, subscribe, and if you have any questions, please put them in the comment box down below. I answer pretty much everybody's comments or questions. How do you feel about this? Do you feel that this is the right step after this? Or do you think you should go to a 3-inch, like a Diatone GTB or the GTR series? Or do you think you just build a 5-inch and just YOLO and go for it? Let me know what you think. All right, guys, thanks for stopping by. Thanks for checking this out. All right, guys, as always, I will see you next time. Bye.